What's up, Taiwan? I'm Philip Brossard with news from here in Taiwan and around the world. Shanghai's vice mayor says he'll push for tour groups from his city to visit Taiwan. The announcement was made during an annual goodwill forum between Taipei and Shanghai and is being hailed as a positive step in cross-strait relations. Cadence Quaranta reports.
Speaking at this year's Taipei-Shanghai Twin Cities Forum, Shanghai's vice mayor said he hoped more Shanghai residents would visit Taipei.
上海方面将积极推动上海居民赴台团队游，旅游路线一定会包含台北市。
Citing worsening relations, Beijing stopped issuing its tourists permits to visit Taiwan in 2019. Soon after, pandemic-era travel restrictions were imposed and cross-strait tourism ground to a halt. And as of 2024, Chinese tourists from just one province are allowed to visit two of Taiwan's outlying islands, Jinmen and Matsu, a move seen as an olive branch from China amid increasingly tense cross-strait relations. Taiwan, meanwhile, has allowed individual tourism to China, but not group tours, a policy that's led to a tit for tat, with China's Taiwan Affairs Office saying it might consider lifting its ban on tourists to Taiwan if Taipei allows groups to visit China. The ongoing deadlock and resulting drop in tourism has hit some local economies hard, with many in the industry happy to see any thaw in relations.
非常的开心，业者也都准备好来接待我们大陆的旅客。希望我们的政府能够尽速的解除台湾就是旅行社赴大陆的禁团令，因为这样子可以让两边的观光旅游可以朝正常的发展。
It's still not clear if tourism from Shanghai will materialize. And even if it does, it won't bring Chinese tourism to popular sites like Taipei 101 behind me back up to pre-pandemic numbers. But still, some in Taiwan are saying the announcement may be a move in the right direction, a positive step in cross-strait relations. James Lin, Alex Chen, and Cadence Quaranta for TaiwanPlus.
With the prospect of Shanghai tour groups returning to Taiwan and former President Ma Ying-jeou visiting China, the government in Taipei has a flurry of questions to answer. Chris Gorin went to the office that governs Taiwan's cross-strait relations and brings us this report.
Taiwan's Mainland Affairs Council, which handles its cross-strait policies, had more news to deal with this week than it normally would. The big story, of course, being the announcement yesterday by Shanghai's vice mayor that he hopes to bring Shanghai tour groups to Taiwan for visits. Now, just as a reminder, China has barred nearly all group tours from visiting Taiwan since 2019, and Taiwan has a similar policy barring their tour groups from visiting China. Now, here's what the MAC had to say about this issue.
不是只有上海市在双城论坛讲话就算数啊，也不是国台办讲话就算数，因为根据陆方的法律，这个是要由文旅部来公告。 第四，那政府重申欢迎陆客来台观光的立场不变。
Now, essentially what the MAC is saying here is that until China's Ministry of Culture and Tourism approves any new policy change, it remains hypothetical. The MAC doesn't seem to have a clear idea about what this policy might look like, and they're not the only ones. Taking a look at Chinese social media comments today, you'll see a lot of comments expressing excitement for the opportunity to visit Taiwan, maybe visit some family members living here, but also confusion. Would this policy only apply to those originally from Shanghai? What about those living in other cities and provinces and are living in Shanghai? Would they be able to go on these tour groups? All that being said, the Taiwanese tourism business community has shown some excitement around this announcement. In fact, several tourism companies saw their stock price rise by nearly 10% on the news that group tours may be coming back. But we're all waiting to see exactly what this policy might look like if it ever comes to fruition. At the same time, MAC also addressed the issue of former Taiwan President Ma Ying-jeou's visit to China. Here's what they had to say about that.
马英九前总统有他自己的行动自由，那他现在也是解除了管制啊，那所以他到大陆，我们还是希望说作为前总统啊，到大陆还是不能够伤害台湾的地位和国格啊。 这是我们的希望。
Now, this kind of response from the MAC is not unusual when Ma makes trips to China, which he does nearly every year. So it does seem like they are not expecting any new controversies this time around either. Luffy Li, John Su, and Chris Gorin for TaiwanPlus.
Now, for more on how recent events are impacting cross-strait relations, reporter Reese Ayers went to the presidential office in Taipei to speak with office spokesperson Li Wen.
Taipei has just hosted the Twin Cities Forum with officials from Shanghai coming over. That facilitates kind of local level dialogue between Taipei and Shanghai specifically. But what's the Lai administration doing at the national level to safeguard Taiwan?
The president has always adhered to his 4 pillars of peace action plan, which includes a comprehensive approach on maintaining peace and stability in the region. And these 4 pillars of peace include bolstering our defense and security. And the second pillar is to increase our economic resilience, which includes as an important component of decreasing Taiwan's economic reliance on China. The third pillar of peace is strengthening our cooperation with like-minded democracies across the world. And the fourth pillar of peace is principled engagement and principled leadership on the cross-strait issues.
That fourth pillar, engaging in cross-strait dialogue, are there any examples of that happening now?
So Taiwan has repeatedly expressed our willingness to engage in dialogue. However, if military provocations are taking place simultaneously, these exchanges encounter certain challenges and there are certain difficulties. China's recent large-scale military deployments and their military activities in the entire region are blatant disruptions to security and stability in the Indo-Pacific. If a person wants to start a conversation with you and that person has a weapon in their hand, then the conversation might not begin smoothly. So I think it's important for China to understand the president's intentions and the president's expressions of goodwill and to uphold its responsibilities for maintaining peace and to engage in rational and peaceful dialogue with Taiwan. Taiwan has not given up on any opportunities to engage in increased exchanges and dialogue with the Chinese side, including the fact that Taiwan is very open to welcoming Chinese tourists, and Taiwan is open to welcoming Chinese students studying in Taiwan for degrees instead of only on a short-term exchange basis.
That was Li Wen, spokesperson for Taiwan's presidential office. The full version of that exclusive interview will be available next week. It discusses the past, present, and future of Lai's presidency. India's capital, New Delhi, is choking under a blanket of thick smog as the city's air quality plummets to dangerous levels. The country's air quality index shows New Delhi's unhealthy air at severe or hazardous levels. The government has imposed restrictions on polluting vehicles and activities until some of the smog dissipates. The thick haze has been hovering over the city since late Monday night, with some people reporting breathing problems.
आंख में जलन होती है, सांस लेने में भी दिक्कत होती है, गले में जो है ना थोड़ा खांसते हैं जब सुबह बहुत ज़्यादा दिक्कत आती है, बलगम काला एकदम आता है.
India's air quality drops every winter, with low temperatures hampering air circulation and farmers burning their leftover crops. Labor rights activists have gathered in Taipei to call on the new labor minister to do more to protect the country's migrant workers. Taiwan is home to over 700,000 migrant workers, but many face discrimination and a system that's left them saddled with debt. Rick Glowert reports.
It's International Migrants Day, and here in Taiwan, outside the country's labor ministry, rights activists and migrant workers are gathering to urge the government to do more to protect the country's migrant workers. Taiwan has more than 700,000 migrant workers, mainly from Southeast Asia, and they work as caregivers in factories and in the country's fishing industry. But significantly, they are not afforded the same rights and protections as other workers in Taiwan.
Domestic worker rates are less than 70% of the minimum wage, and we have no day off. We stay in our employer's home 24 hours a day, either working on our standby, which severely affects our physical and mental health.
Among the demands from protesters here is that migrant workers should be allowed to change and choose jobs themselves without having to go through a broker. They're also saying that the government should do away with limits on how long migrant workers can live and work in Taiwan. Taiwan has a new Labour Minister, Hong Shen-han, and when he was a lawmaker, he championed migrant workers' rights. Protesters here saying that now he is in charge, he should start making the changes he demanded in the past. Justin Wu and Rick Lowett in Taipei for TaiwanPlus.
In Taipei, an iconic traditional stir-fry spot is closing for good. For decades, Atsai's restaurant was famous for its classic local flavors, but also as a secret hideout for political dissidents. Joyce Tseng visited the restaurant in its final days.
Opening the doors one last time, owner Yang Xiaoxia is preparing to clear everything out of Atsai's restaurant, once a legendary stir-fry joint in Taipei. After 33 years, it's had its last day of service. Atsai was a local favorite through the 1990s, a time of transition for Taiwan from brutal martial law to democracy. The place was founded by video journalist Yu Yueshu, who wanted a drinking spot for his friends, later selling it to Yang's husband, Liu Jianhua or Ahua, the restaurant's cook turned second owner. Yang, who goes by Hua Sao, says it was her husband who gave the place its glory.
解严以后，那时候是很乱，但是就是那种你在那个地方去，我们可以高谈阔论的时候，那个自由感，让大家觉得很放松。
That freedom helps the joint become the gathering spot for pro-democracy activists, pulling in patrons like Chen Shui-bian, Taiwan's first president from the Democratic Progressive Party, or DPP, that ended the Kuomintang's over 5-decade rule. Other figures known to have dined at the spot include Shi Mingde, the late democracy activist known as Taiwan's Mandela, and more recently, DPP figures Enoch Wu and Freddie Lim. After Ahua died from cancer in 2020, Hua Sao says it's been tough, and so she's decided to close for good.
曾经有听人者说，也是我的客人，他说，没有阿华老板在的地方就不像阿财店。最主要的也是成本压力，还有就是最大原因就是我的那个厨师儿子，他身体出了一些状况。
Hua Sao's grateful that up until the last service, customers enjoyed the Taiwanese home cooking and even played traditional games. For its final days, Hua Sao has turned the space into a photo exhibit for patrons to enjoy the atmosphere one last time.
For the past 3 decades, this restaurant has also been home to many relics that are quintessentially Taiwanese, like these hand-painted movie posters and also this vintage bottle cap sign for Heisong root beer that the owner is actually putting up for auction starting at almost $2,000 US.
And that's not all. Everything here is up for sale, a final draw for the restaurant's longtime customers and fans, some even discovering treasures with a personal connection.
比较意外就是有看到父亲的一套全集啊。以时间来讲的话，就这阿财的店的历史应该是会跟我父亲这个在同一个年代这样。
我很喜欢这种台湾啤酒的小酒杯，因为我觉得这个就是很 very Taiwanese style 的。 然后这也是一个非常值得纪念的物品，然后也是代表着这间店的一些历史吧。
Hua Sao says it was a group of longtime customers who proposed and organized the auction.
It's kind of we are preserved everything and want to pass on the memories.
For Hua Sao, letting go of the restaurant means allowing it to reunite with her husband, the soul of a place that brought people together during some of Taiwan's darkest times. Chris Ma and Joyce Sin for TaiwanPlus.
Thanks for joining us here on What's Up Taiwan. Finally, we leave you with images of a massive indoor ice rink recently opened in Paris just in time for Christmas. I'm Philip Brossard. Take care. We'll see you next time.